In the quiet town of Marshall, Texas, a 4-year-old girl named Suzanne Payton began experiencing nightmares that would haunt her for decades. The year was 1962, and young Suzanne had just moved into a new house with her family. Within months of settling in, she was plagued by severe earaches and throat infections that led to a near-fatal reaction to penicillin. As her mother rushed her to the doctor's office, something extraordinary happened. Suzanne found herself watching from outside her body as the doctor administered the life-saving shot. This near-death experience marked the beginning of a journey that would span lifetimes and uncover a terrible family secret buried for nearly a century. The nightmares that followed were always the same. Suzanne would find herself in an old dark house with a narrow staircase leading to an attic. An older woman would drag her up those stairs and lock her inside. These dreams occurred almost nightly for years, becoming so severe that Suzanne began sleepwalking. Her father would find her outside in the darkness, screaming names and begging for help, names that meant nothing to anyone in the family. Eventually, he had to install locks high on the doors to prevent his daughter from escaping into the night. Suzanne's childhood was marked by other peculiarities. Raised in a Baptist household, she became inexplicably obsessed with Catholic nuns after watching funerals at the Catholic cemetery across from their house. At age 5, she would climb trees with binoculars to watch the ceremonies, and when her father explained who the nuns were, she desperately wanted to become one. She fashioned a makeshift habit from her father's suit jacket, her brother's black toboggan, and a white handkerchief, blessing her mother whenever she took the Lord's name in vain, much to her mother's frustration. The family dynamics were strained. Suzanne was one of 6 children, but she never felt she belonged. Her relationship with her mother and her mother's side of the family was particularly difficult. She was very much a daddy's girl, and at age 6 she distinctly remembered looking at her reflection in their living room window and thinking, "I don't belong here, and my real parents are looking for me." Decades passed. Suzanne grew up, married, had 3 children, and worked as an accountant. The nightmares faded, but never completely disappeared. Then, on January 3rd, 1999, shortly after her 40th birthday, everything changed. That night, Suzanne had a dream unlike any other. She found herself back in Marshall, driving to the bank with a bulging money bag on the passenger seat, a common occurrence in her accounting work. Finding the bank closed, she made a U-turn and encountered a woman on the sidewalk who motioned for her to pull over. In the dream, Suzanne knew this woman was her deceased grandmother, her mother's mother, though she looked nothing like she had in life. "Park your car and follow me," the woman said. "I'm having an estate sale, and I think I have something you're going to want." They walked to a house where Suzanne saw her mother's deceased sister Margie standing at the back. When Suzanne turned to the woman who had brought her there and said, "But you're Maman," the response was chilling. "Oh, I used to be your grandmother." The grandmother then presented a wooden keepsake box with mirrors nested inside like Russian dolls. As Suzanne leaned forward to see her reflection in the final mirror, she saw not herself, but a young woman from what appeared to be an antique photograph, hair pulled up with tendrils hanging down. Just as Suzanne was about to ask who this was, a voice from behind asked, "Who died the year you were born?" Suzanne woke at exactly 4:44 a.m., unable to return to sleep. She knew this was no ordinary dream. By 6:30 a.m, she was calling her sister, desperate for answers. Her mother had taken up genealogy in her 60s, but Suzanne had always declined offers to see the family tree. Why would she want to know more about a family she didn't get along with? The phone call that came back 45 minutes later would change everything. "Well, you've done it now. You've opened Pandora's box," her sister said. "What are you talking about? You were the only birth in 1958, and Grandma Avery was the only death." "Grandma who?" "Avery. That was Maman's mother. And there's a reason we've never heard her name. The tale goes that she left Marshall, Texas in 1903, abandoning her husband and her children, and never came back." Something erupted within Suzanne. She began shaking with an anger she couldn't explain. "That's a lie," she insisted, on the verge of tears. "That's not true." When her sister revealed that January 3rd was the very day this woman had died, Suzanne was stunned. The coincidence was too profound to ignore, yet she tried to push it aside for weeks. But the compulsion grew stronger. Finally, she and her sister went to the Marshall Library to search for an obituary. If Virginia had truly abandoned her family, why would there be one? They found it. Virginia Avery was buried in the Catholic cemetery in an unmarked grave, the very cemetery Suzanne had watched so obsessively as a child. The obituary revealed that Virginia had spent the last 14 years of her life in the San Francisco-Oakland area of California. This detail triggered another memory. Years before the dream, in 1996, Suzanne had travelled to San Francisco for a business meeting. Despite being a cautious traveller who never ventured out alone in unfamiliar cities, she had felt an overwhelming urge to explore. Without asking for directions, she navigated the city's complex public transportation system, buses, subways, trolleys, as if she'd lived there all her life. She even gave her aunt and uncle directions to the Golden Gate Bridge, terrifying them with her inexplicable knowledge of a city she'd never visited. Now, reading Virginia's obituary, it all made sense. Virginia had lived in the very area where Suzanne had felt so mysteriously at home. Suzanne knew she had to learn more. She began writing what she thought would be Virginia's story in diary form. The moment she wrote "Dearest Diary," something shifted. The language that flowed from her pen was not her own East Texas vernacular, but the refined prose of someone educated in New Orleans parochial schools. Words like attestation appeared, words Suzanne had to look up to confirm they even existed. Every detail she wrote in Virginia's voice later proved to be true. The story that emerged was heartbreaking. Virginia had been left with her wealthy grandparents in New Orleans at age 4 when her parents moved to Jefferson, Texas. Her mother feared the dangerous river journey would kill her daughter, as it had already claimed another grandchild. Virginia was supposed to join them once the railroad was completed, but that reunion never came. Instead, she was raised in opulence by wealthy grandparents in 1884, receiving the finest education and even travelling to Germany. At age 19, Virginia was summoned to Marshall for what she believed would be her younger sister's funeral. Instead, her father had arranged a marriage to Andrew Lipton, who wanted her inheritance. The marriage was a nightmare. Virginia was kept prisoner in the house, and after her first escape attempt, locked in the attic. She could hear her children playing below, while she remained trapped above. Virginia's grandmother in New Orleans eventually orchestrated her escape, sending a hand-drawn map hidden in a letter. Virginia fled, but had to leave her children behind. When she tried to gain custody, she discovered something had happened the night of her escape. something so devastating that it forever prevented her from reclaiming her children. The divorce decrees Suzanne found proved Virginia hadn't abandoned her family. She had filed for divorce first, fighting for her children. But the official story that she had abandoned them became the family truth, passed down through generations. Years of research followed. In 2014, while in New Orleans to meet with film producers about adapting her story, Suzanne made an astounding discovery. A court case from 1884 led to a 61-page will that had been untouched for 117 years. The will, dated December 13th, 1886, Suzanne's birthday, proved that Virginia's grandparents were founding members of New Orleans' Garden District, and confirmed the wealth Virginia had described in the diary entries. Perhaps most remarkably, Suzanne discovered that two of her brothers had unknowingly rented houses connected to Virginia's story. One was the very house where Virginia had been held captive, the house with the narrow staircase from Suzanne's childhood nightmares. She had entered at once for a nephew's birthday party and fled in panic at the sight of those stairs. The other house was where Andrew Lipton had taken the children after Virginia's escape. In a town of 25,000 people, across decades, both houses had been rented by Suzanne's family. The synchronicities were undeniable. Virginia's story ended tragically. In 1957, she returned to Marshall after Andrew Lipton's death, trying to find her daughter. When she revealed the truth about her past to someone she trusted, they had her committed to a mental institution to protect their own secrets. She spent just over a year there before taking her own life on January 3rd, 1958, 3 months after her 80th birthday, and the exact day Suzanne would dream of her 41 years later. The woman who had supposedly abandoned her family was actually buried beside her parents in Marshall's Catholic Cemetery, in an unmarked grave just across from where Suzanne spent her childhood, watching funerals and dreaming of becoming a nun. Through Suzanne's memories and meticulous research, Virginia's true story has finally come to light. The lies that destroyed her reputation and caused generations of family pain have been exposed. Virginia didn't abandon her children. She was a victim of a cruel conspiracy who spent the rest of her life trying to reunite with them. Suzanne's journey not only restored Virginia's dignity, but also healed the rift with her own mother, who came to believe that only Virginia herself could have known where to find the evidence that had remained hidden for so long. As her mother said, after reviewing all the proof, "I believe you have to be her, because I know how much I dug and I'm good at what I do, but I never found any of this. I think it was because Virginia would have been the only one that knew where it was." Today, Virginia's grave has been marked with a ceramic cross, and her story lives on through Suzanne's book, Virginia's Diary, and an upcoming film adaptation. What began as a child's recurring nightmare has become a powerful affirmation of the continuity of the soul and the importance of uncovering truth, no matter how deeply it's been buried. The 4-year-old girl who climbed trees to watch Catholic funerals, who wanted desperately to become a nun, who felt she didn't belong in her own family, she was carrying the memories and unfulfilled desires of a woman who had lost everything, including her faith and her children. Through Suzanne's courage to follow these memories back to their source, Virginia Avery had finally found justice and perhaps peace.